Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purudikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purudikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So, is it a deal? We'll have 5 chanters today. Because we're kind of behind. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 21st day of December 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 18 entitled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. Text 62 on page 701 in most of your books. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata tatpasarat param shantim stanam prapsyasi shashvatam tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata tatpasarat param shantim stanam prapsyasi shashvatam tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata tatpasarat param shantim stanam prapsyasi shashvatam. Go ahead, chant. Tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata tatpasarat param shantim Dimitri. Tameva sharanam gaccha. Sarva bhavena bharata. Tat prasadat param shantim. Prapsati shashvatam. Prakash. Tameva sharanam gaccha. Sarva bhavena bharata. Tat prasadat param shantim. Sthanam prapsati shashvatam. Go ahead, Bimu. Tameva sharanam gaccha. Sarva bhavena bharata. Tat prasadat param shantim. Sthanam prapsati shashvatam. Michelle. Tameva sharanam gaccha. Sarva bhavena bharata. Tat prasadat param shantim. Sthanam prapsati shashvatam. Zoomland?
Tameva sharanam. Go ahead, Prabhuji.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go, Prabhuji.
No, you go.
Okay. Tameva sharanam gaccha.
Tameva sharanam gaccha.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Tat prasadat param shantim.
Tat prasadat param shantim.
Sthanam prapyasi shasvatam.
Sthanam prapsati shashvatam.
Jessica Mataji.
Tameva sharanam gaccha.
Tameva sharanam gaccha.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Tat prasadat param shantim.
Tat prasadat param shantim.
Sthanam prapsati shashvatam.
Sthanam prapsati shashvatam.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
You're welcome, Mataji. Tam eva sharanam gaccha.
Tameva sharanam gaccha.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Tat prasadat param shantim.
Tat prasadat param shantim.
Sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam.
Sthanam prapsati shashvatam. Tam, unto him, eva, certainly, sharanam gaccha, surrender. Sarva bhavena, in all respects. Bharata, O son of Bharata. Tat prasadat, by his grace. Param, transcendental. Shantim, peace. Sthanam, the abode. Prapsasi, you will get. Shashvatam, eternal. Translation. Translation. O scion of Bharat. Scion means descendant. O scion of Bharat, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. Purport. A living entity should therefore surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart, and that will relieve him from all kinds of miseries of this material existence. By such surrender, not only will one be released from all miseries in this life, but at the end he will reach the Supreme God. The transcendental world is described in the Vedic literature, Rig Veda 1:22-20, as Tad Vishno Paramam Padam. Since all of creation is the kingdom of God, everything material is actually spiritual. But Paramam Padam specifically refers to the eternal abode, which is called the spiritual sky or Vaikuntha. In the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated, Sarvasya chaham vidisannivishtaha. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart. So this recommendation that one should surrender unto the Supersoul sitting within means that one should surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Krishna has already been accepted by Arjuna as the Supreme. He was accepted in the 10th chapter as Param Brahma Param Dhamma. Arjuna has accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the supreme abode of all living entities, not only because of his personal experience, but also because of the evidence of great authorities like Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyas. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we pointed this out before, and it's one of the interesting features of the Bhagavad Gita, and that is that there are certain places, such as this one, where Krishna suddenly starts speaking in the third person. In 61, is the Ishvara Vidyashaya Natishtati Brahmayan Samudnam Banturanimaya. He says the Supreme Lord is situated. This is the Supreme Lord speaking. Why not just say, I am situated? But he says the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. And then begins the next verse, which we just read, Tam, unto him, O Scion of Bart, and surrender unto him utterly. By his grace you will attain transcendental peace and supreme and eternal abode. So this indicates the different roles that Krishna is taking. He's here in the role of a spiritual master. He's of course taking the external role of the chariot driver, but that's just a way in which he can stay close to Arjuna and participate in the battle without overtly fighting it. So he's in this role of the teacher, the supreme teacher, and the friend of Arjuna. And so he's advising him to surrender to the Supreme Lord in his heart. But as Prabhupada refers in the purport here, Sarvasya Chaham, Aham means I. I am situated in everyone's heart as the super soul. For me come knowledge, forgetfulness, remembrance, like that. So most of the time, of course, Krishna is presenting himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but there are certain places here where he takes that role of the teacher, the guru, and he's talking about him in reference to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So again, he's encouraging the sharanam gachat, to take shelter. Now, when there's this question of shelter, it means that it's a place of safety. That's the whole idea, is that you're taking refuge. And Arjuna needs that refuge. When at the beginning he's very, very disturbed. Remember, he's crying, he's paralyzed, he drops his bow, which is unheard of for a Kshatriya. In fact, there was one pastime I think I remember here tell that in the Mahabharata, that if anyone suggests that he put his bow down, right, that he'll shoot him with the bow. In other words, it's a sign of an enemy. But here he is voluntarily or involuntarily, let's say, but he dropped the bow itself. So he's very disturbed in mind, and this is very clear in the first chapter, at the beginning of the second chapter, that although he's come up with this argument based on the Vedas why he shouldn't fight, it doesn't give him much solace. It doesn't really satisfy his dilemma, because he knows he should fight his friend, the Supreme Personality of God, and wants him to fight. It's for the best interest of the world. And yet it's such a painful prospect of killing his friends, his grandfather, his teacher, and like that. So he's in this dilemma. So here it says, you will get the supreme peace, param shantim. All your difficulties will be resolved if you surrender to the Lord in the heart, who is none other than me. In other words, if you fight this battle because I want you to do it, you will come to a different platform, and you will all your anxiety will be relieved. And this is one of the it's not the goal of bhakti, but it's one of the say side benefits. Just as liberation is really a side benefit for the bhaktas. Prabhupada was a favorite. He would quote this verse from the Bilvamangal Thakur's Krishna Karnamrita. Bhaktis tvayi stadatada bhagavan yadisyad daivena nakpalati divya kishora murti. He begins the verse by saying, my dear Lord. Now this is Bilvamangal Thakur, who Prabhupada says in several places, including his books, lived for 700 years in Vrindavan after retiring there. And he was always seeing Krishna. He was physically blind. He had put out his own eyes. I won't go into the whole story, but he's blind. But he's seeing Krishna constantly with his spiritual eyes. And he often talks about that, of seeing in his Krishna Karnamrita and other verses. So here in this verse, particular verse, it says, Bhaktis tvahis tadatada. If one is firmly fixed in devotion to you, O Lord, Krishna, Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yadisyad, then one will get the fruit. Daivena palati divya kishora murti. And what is the fruit? A wonderful vision of your transcendental adolescent form. That's and as far as mukti is concerned, mukti swayam mukulitanjali sevate sman dayave mukti swayam mukulitanjali sevate dharmartha kama gatayak samayak patiksha. As far as mukti is concerned, she's waiting for me with this anjali, this mudra. It's nice to know what some of these mudras mean. There's a whole culture of mudras, of gestures, hand gestures that convey meaning. Just like every morning, or those who, whenever you see Radha and Krishna here, Radharani has this wonderful mudra. And it has a name, Abhaya Dan, giving you the gift of fearlessness. If you meditate on that hand, and you pick up on her mood, he says, don't worry. You just develop your love for Krishna and myself, and all your anxieties will be relieved. Wonderful. So there's another mudra here. Every time we have a pushpanjali, it's an anjali mood. And it's a mood of offering and willingness to serve. And it's interesting because when I was working on the Bhagavatam, we kept coming across this idea of the folded hands. And that always seemed to me to mean this, And this is like, the Western religion thing. When you're praying, you're like this. There's no room in there. You're not offering anything. You're supplicating. Please give me this, give me this, give me this. But the Vaishnava way is like this, and inside is flowers or your heart. You're offering. So Mukti herself is at the door, waiting to offer her services to me. In other words, you don't have to try it separately for Mukti, for liberation. It's already there. And as far as whatever I need of Dharma, Artha, and Kama, these are the other three of the four Purusharthas, goals of human life. Religiosity, and economic development, and sense gratification. Well, devotees, as far as religion goes, the real Dharma is bhakti. We learned that right at the beginning of Bhagavatam. And the idea is you're not meant to be concerned about the others. The others, yes, you can maintain your family or house, but in simple, that's just facilitating your service, keeping body and soul together. So there's no real concern for amassing great quantities of wealth. And mukti, as mentioned here, is just comes automatically. You don't worry about it. And kama, okay, the Sunday feast is there. In other words, it's facility for enjoyment, but in the context of Krishna consciousness. So this is what this supreme peace is coming when one is situated in one's constitutional position. This is really the source of peace. And as Krishna explains way at the beginning in the second chapter, real peace comes when you're free of material desires. And your only desire is focused on pleasing the Lord. There's a famous verse, a Bengali verse that Lord Chaitanya speaks in his teachings to Sanatana Goswami. It says, how does it start? Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakaliya shanta. Krishna bhakta, here it is. Krishna bhakta nishkama ata eva shanta. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakaliya shanta. There's basically four classifications of human beings. The vast majority are in the classification of bhukti kami. Kami means one who desires ardently material pleasures. So there can not be any peace. Even if you get what you think you desire, soon it's taken away from you, or the pleasure of it fades. You don't really want to enjoy it anymore. And there's always some other desire over the hill that you have to try to achieve. There's never enough. You can see, are these billionaires and 10 billionaires and even 100 billionaires, are they emanating transcendental bliss and happiness and peace? No. They're thinking, I only have 50 billion, and he's got 60 billion? It's insane. It's madness. It's total madness. So, bhukti kamis, forget it. But even the mukti kamis, those who want liberation, that's ultimately a material desire. We're also, ordinary people are mukti kamis. Mukti basically boils down to alleviating your distress, physical, emotional, mental, whatever distress there is. And there's always something either threatening. The threat of distress is also a distress. The fear that's engendered when some cyclone is coming or whatever. So that can never give you peace. The desire for mukti, because the mukti that comes from without Krishna consciousness is unsteady. Prabhupada would always quote this verse, Ye nye vindaksha vimukta maninas, tvayasta bhava rabhishuddha buddhaya. Those who are not your devotees, they may think that they're liberated, because by great effort, they've controlled their senses and mind and risen up to the Brahmabhuta platform. But because they're not situated in service to you, they get bored up there. You know, it's like if you're in a hospital, you broke your leg and you're in traction. You know, and basically what you're thinking, your ardent desire, when will I get healed up? You know, and finally the day comes, you're let out of the hospital. Is that your goal in life? No, your goal in life is to resume your activities that you did before. You don't get out of the hospital and then sit down on the curb and say, "This is it. I'm in Satori." You call a cab or Uber or something and go back home. So that's what it's like to be the one mukti for itself. It's based on fear of birth, old age, disease, and death. You know, and then so it's not steady, and then they fall down again. So then there's the siddhikamis. There's the yogis who practice yoga and they get various perfections, practically inconceivable. This is where the walking on water comes in, being lighter than the lightest, astral travel, you know, being able to get anything you want from afar. Prabhupada tells the story of, was it a friend of his father's or some acquaintance who knew a yogi in Calcutta who asked his uncle or whoever it was, asked me for something. Said, okay, I want a pomegranate from Afghanistan. Apparently that's they were, you know, they're way back in Calcutta. You know, he couldn't go, you know, fly and get it. So he said, look in the next room. So in the next room, he opened the room, and on the bed is a freshly broken branch with a pomegranate, a fresh pomegranate on it. Somehow he had been able to do that. There was a godbrother of Srila Prabhupada's. I met him. I didn't see any mystic power, but he was very blissful Vaishnava. Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji. And all he wanted to do was chant Hare Krishna. The story was when he first joined the ashram, one of Bhaktisiddhanta's ashram, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, all of the other brahmacharis and everything were working so hard, they were going out, you know, and they were doing this, and all he was doing is chanting. And so they went to Bhaktisiddhanta and complained. This brahmachari, he doesn't want to do anything but chant. Says, you try to do that for one day. You just let him chant, you know. So he was famous for chanting, and being very blissful. So he was with Prabhupada in '77 when he left his body, when he went, you know, entered the eternal Nitya Leela in November of '77. Now, think of this what you mean, but he was a Babaji. He didn't go on trains. He didn't go in cars or anything like that. If he wanted to go somewhere, he would walk, you know, or some other mystical means of transportation. But he wasn't taking any trains. So I was there just after Prabhupada disappeared. And I came November 16th. It's a whole story. I'm on the plane going there. It's about the 12th of November. Prabhupada left on the 14th. And I'm coming from L.A. to Delhi and New Vrindavan. So we went from LA, we took the eastern route across the country and then to go to London and Heathrow and then connection. That was the plan. Krishna arranged for it to be a bomb scare on the plane. How often did that happen? So, okay, and so we landed not in Heathrow, but they had us land in Dublin, in some airport in Ireland. And for 24 hours, they went over that plane with a fine-tooth comb. And of course, they didn't find a bomb. It was just a scare. But we missed our connection, so we came late. And so I got there in Vrindavan on the 16th, a couple of days later. And he was there. I saw him there. And later on, the stories came how he was present with Prabhupada in those final days and so forth. So then the plan was that we would go to Mayapur. Because what happens is then, I don't know if you know, if you've seen any of the videos, but they took Prabhupada on a procession. They had all these garlands on, you know, that he passed away with and so forth. So those flowers are very, very sacred and potent. And you take those and you can bury them in another sacred place, and that becomes a Pushpa Samadhi, another Samadhi. And it's a beautiful, large structure in Mayapur that was raised up. So we went there for that and put that in there. And then I went across the Ganges to visit the ashram of Sridhar Dev Maharaj, one of Prabhupada's exalted godbrothers. because I'm working as a reporter for Back to Godhead. I was working on Back to Godhead magazine, and we had a report that he had proof that Prabhupada was a Shaktivesh avatar. Well, that's newsworthy, you know. So I went there, and who greets me at the door but Krishna's Babaji? Well, how did he get all the way down to Mayapur from Vrindavan in one day without taking a train? He doesn't take trains. He had mystic powers. Even the Vaishnavas also have some mystic powers. And it was later I heard that this was well known. He could go anywhere. Anyway, so that was just something extraneous. He didn't want it. It was just given to him. But those who are trying for those, the mystic yogis, that's their goal in life. You know, and some few, by great austerities and yoga, can get these. So that's also a kind of lust. It's impersonal desire. And none of them can be peaceful. And you read about so many yogis in the Bhagavatam. Durvasa Muni, you know, he was a very powerful yogi. Thousands of disciples, mystic powers. But he was very envious of Ambarish, a king who's on a lower plane, you know. But he was a great Vaishnav. You know, he put his mind on Krishna's lotus feet. He used his hands to clean the temple. Everything was engaged, very exalted. So why is this king, who's in the lower scale, you know, Durvasa is in the Brahminical scale, he's in the Kshatriya, getting so much honor? People are revering him. They're not revering me. So he was envious. That's not peaceful. Anything but. So he had this. He arranged for Ambarish Maharaj to apparently make an offense against him by breaking Ekadashi and eating before his guest. It's a long story, but you know the story. So he took great umbrage at that, pulled out one of his long hairs, and created a Kritya, a female fire demoness, to go and immolate Ambarish. So imagine, you know, that Ambarish is there offering his prayers, and here comes this fiery demon. He didn't flinch. He didn't say, oh, you know, start running. He just said, well, if this is Krishna's will, Hare Krishna, you know, like that. So Krishna's chakra came, destroyed that demon, and then went after Durvasa. Now Durvasa could have been, you know, gone back to Godhead, or at least, you know, attained liberation, just by saying, take me. But he didn't. He was scared, and so he, with his yogic speed, somehow he fled and went up to Shiva to ask him to help. He said, I can't help you, got the chakra after you. Brahma said the same thing. He finally goes up to Vaikuntha, the Vaikuntha planet in this world, you know, Dhruvalok, and says, fell down before Narayan. Lord Narayan says, please remove your chakra. You know, he says, and Narayan says something very interesting. He says, I can't. I'm controlled by my pure devotees. I have no. If you want to be relieved, you have to go back down there to Ambarish and surrender, and then he'll maybe you know. So he did that, and of course Ambarish called off the chakra. So the idea is this: the shanti. The point is the shanti. Param shantim comes from being free from all material desires and simply being obsessed, if you will, with pleasing Krishna. That's this platform of peace. So that comes not as something that you're coveting, but as again as a byproduct. The peacefulness is there as a result of pure bhakti. So that's he's saying that you just by his mercy, tat prasadat, you will attain supreme peace, and you will go to the supreme destination, the eternal destination of the spiritual world. Yes.
Just a quick comment, because you were mentioning Krishna Das Babaji making it from Mayapur to Vrindavan very quickly.
From Vrindavan to Mayapur.
Oh yeah, Vrindavan to Mayapur. There's also a story about Gorkishore Das Babaji. It's in that book, Babaji Maharaj, where he was staying in Navadvip, and somehow or other he was going to Mayapur, or he was going to visit Mayapur, and he showed up to the Gaudiya Math just like in the middle of the night, somehow or other, from Navadvip across the Ganga.
Yeah, and he's blind.
Yeah, and he's blind. Yeah, so there's no boats going across the Ganga, and also he was blind, and somehow he made it there.
Yeah, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati were there chanting his billion names, right?
Yeah.
And he comes, Maharaj, you know, Gurudev, how did you get here? And we just laughed or something.
Yeah, he said, don't worry, or something like that.
Yeah, various. I mean, Bilva Mangal himself, you know, I mean, 700 years. I thought, is this a misprint? I said, no, Prabhupada said it several times, and apparently it's known. He was known as Leela Shuka, and he somehow lived for 700 years in Vrindavan. Wrote not only Karanamrita, but many other books. All right, should we go on?
No.
Not yet. Go ahead, Vijay.
I have a question. Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. The quote from the purport, more or less at the end of the first paragraph, is as follows. Quote, since all of creation is the kingdom of God, everything material is actually spiritual. End quote. So my question is, in order for me to see and understand that everything material is actually spiritual, what is it that I need to do?
You have to use everything that you can of the material world in Krishna's service, and you have to remember Krishna all the time, and especially you can remember the 7th chapter where Krishna talks about Bhuma, Apa, Olano, Vayo, all of these elements that we're surrounded with, and the interactions. I am the sun of the, I am the light of the sun and the moon. I am the ability in man. I am the fragrance of the earth. I am the taste of water. I'm the strength. So if you remember that chapter, how can you not remember Krishna? In other words, when you accept the axiom that the energy and the energetic are non-different, that there's this connection that cannot be broken. And that makes sense, because the sun and the sunshine, even sometimes the language will say, there's plenty of sun coming into the room. No, there's plenty of sunshine. If the sun came in the room, you'd be finished. But the idea is, well, there's no meaning to the sun without the sunshine, and vice versa. So similarly, everything is connected to Krishna. It's all his energy. So in that sense, it's all spiritual. That's why he says, Daivi yesha gunami mama maya duratya. That this maya energy, which we commonly think, oh, this material energy, is also Daivi. It's divine, because it's Krishna's energy. So when you see Krishna everywhere in that sense, then you can begin to understand everything material is actually spiritual. It's just a different kind of spiritual energy. It's an energy that's not always manifest in the same way, but it is eternal. The material energy is eternal. Sometimes manifest, sometimes not. Just like the universe, sometimes manifest, sometimes not. But we ourselves are a different quality of energy. We're spiritual energy, conscious energy. And so we want to go to that world which is purely manifest from that internal energy of Krishna. The pleasure energy, Ladani, Sandani, and Sambit. So, but still, those who have that vision of being always engaged in Krishna's service, they can see this world as definitely part of Krishna's kingdom, and meant for his service, and matter can be turned into spirit, like this building or things within it. There's a pitcher that could just as easily be holding beer down the street, but it's holding this holy water that's used to clean the devotees' hands when they take Charanamrita. So it's a spiritual picture. And like anyone who knows, we sit and chant japa, and guests will come and they will end up leaning against the wall. And we decided, Prabhu, please don't lean against the wall. Here's a cushion, because the whole building is actually a manifestation of Balaram, And it's very interesting. Well, what about the floor? We're walking on the floor. Yeah, but we have to walk on the floor, and if it's the mercy of Balaram that he allows us to do that. But we don't have to lean against the wall. So we should respect it as transcendental. So this is the science of bhakti, using everything, including our own bodies, which are made of the same earth, water, fire, and ether, in Krishna's service, and then surcharging them. Prabhupada would always give this analogy of the iron rod and the fire. The iron is just a cold iron rod, but if you put it in the fire, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and eventually glows red. And then it's non-different from fire. You can start fires with it, it's just as hot. So our consciousness, if we keep it on Krishna, and that's where our free will comes in, we can chant Hare Krishna or not. We can hear the things about Krishna or not. It's up to us. But if we stay in the fire of Krishna consciousness by serving him, using all the facility for staying connected, yoga, bhakti yoga, then we ourselves become surcharged and become blissful, and we see the whole world as simply meant for Krishna's service. And we see that our mission is to try to bring as much of it into Krishna's service as possible, including the other living entities in human form who have forgotten Krishna. And that's why it's a preaching movement, Sankirtan. Is that okay, Vijay?
Yes, Prabhu, better than okay. A wonderful answer to my question. And if I may, I liked it when you said it's up to us to do it or not. Thank you very much.
Yeah, free will, sure. Okay, moving on. We're almost at the end point. Text 63. Iti te jnanamakyatam guyad guyataram maya vimushyaita dasheshena yateti sitakuru. Thus I have explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. Purport. The Lord has already explained to Arjuna the knowledge of Brahma Bhuta. One who is in the Brahma Bhuta condition is joyful. He never laments, nor does he desire anything. That is due to confidential knowledge. Krishna also discloses knowledge of the Supersoul. This is also Brahman knowledge, knowledge of Brahman, but it is superior. Here the words Yatejasi Tathakuru, as you like you may act, indicate that God does not interfere with the little independence of the living entity. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has explained in all respects how one can elevate his living condition. The best advice imparted to Arjuna is to surrender unto the Supersoul seated within his heart. By right discrimination, one should agree to act according to the order of the Supersoul. That will help one become situated constantly in Krishna consciousness, the highest perfectional stage of human life. Arjuna is being directly ordered by the Personality of Godhead to fight. Surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in the best interest of the living entities. It is not for the interest of the Supreme. Before surrendering, one is free to deliberate on this subject as far as the intelligence goes. That is the best way to accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such instruction comes also through the spiritual master, the bona fide representative of Krishna. So this is a very important understanding, is that in our present conditioned state, we can't directly hear the voice of the Supersoul. He's still giving us intelligence, remembrance, guidance, and so forth, but we can't understand his instructions that are not prompted by our desires, but really are prompted by his desires. And so that Supersoul appears through the agency of the pure devotee, the spiritual master, and the Shastra. We're making this point again and again. Lord Chaitanya explains that to Sanatana Goswami in his teachings in the Madhya Lila. So that's his mercy. In other words, makes it accessible. He makes this knowledge accessible. But what do we need in order to really access that knowledge? Faith. That faith has to be there. That this instruction, that this book, that this really is for our best interest. This is for our eternal best interest. And that faith is acquired through association with the faithful. That's how it's acquired, by experience with devotees, and especially pure devotees, and seeing their lifestyle and the quality of their being, and it's intangible. But that's essential. That's sadhu sangha. That's explained in, again, I'm not going to go through the whole sadhu sangashta again, but that's the idea. Is that's how Krishna appears, through the agency of his pure devotees. And they have the power of imparting that seed of faith, the seed of bhakti, the bhakti lata bija. And if we properly water it through hearing and chanting and serving, then the faith grows and the conviction grows, and we can really progress. So here he's talking about how guyatamam. This is going to continue in the next couple of verses. Most confidential. Most confidential means it's a secret that is revealed to, the truth of it is revealed to those who have faith and sincerity. Yes, Michael? Do we have a mic for him? A mic for Mike. Uh-oh. Oh, just press and hold.
So something here struck me, and I want your interpretation. I have my own, but I'm not.
Okay.
The reason the
This is-
timeline is not important. So where it says, before surrendering, one is free to deliberate on this subject as far as the intelligence goes. That is the best way to accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of the Godhead.
Uh-huh.
So is that something that, it's a good thing to do that, or is it more like if you have to do that to have the confidence to surrender fully, then do it? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think I do. In other words,
'Cause I
why
think about
do
that
we
a
need to deliberate? Why don't we just surrender? Is that what you're saying? In other words, does this
Yes.
does this provide proper?
Well, I know why I can speak for myself,
Yeah. Go ahead.
because my ego tells me to question things and play devil's advocate a lot, not just on spiritual, on everything,
Yeah.
because I question motives and stuff. I want to make, like, I don't want to accept things easily, right?
Okay.
Now, I know I should, but to be fully, like it says, like, so one deliberate.
One is free to
best
deliberate
accept,
and
to have that confidence.
As far as the
Something said
intelligence
confidence,
goes.
right?
Mhm.
To have the confidence to surrender completely or something. And I want that confidence, but I can't get too easily. I have to question, I have to run it through my gauntlet of obstacles to make sure, yes, I feel confident. Now I am free of my own mind. I've gone through the BS of my own nonsensical ego, right? So
Well, that's part of our free will, to deliberate, and we can see that Arjun, he had so many questions. He's showing how to do it, and it's up to us to how long we want to engage in that process.
waste time.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing about this Bhagavad Gita that's very dramatic. There's kind of a time limit here. They're on a battlefield. The battle's about to occur. Is it going to happen or not? So that's why it's. It took him 45. I don't know how it took him 45 minutes. Have you ever tried to chant the whole Bhagavad Gita for? I mean, I'm a pretty fast chanter, but.
The timing was different.
You think time was? All right, let's give it. Maybe that's it. Anyway. The point is, it's a very Arjun does accept it, and he'll say in a few verses, by your mercy, my doubts have been destroyed.
So that statement then, so before saying one is free, so is that like, well, if you have to do it, or it's good to do it? Go ahead and do it. It's good to do it. I suggest you do it.
Well,
Or is it like if you
but
have to
Prabhupada
do
always
it?
encourages that. This is why he took such pains to put everything in these purports and to hour after hour to deliver these lectures, and because he wanted to that when if and when we do surrender, it will be with full faith and confidence, not just on a whim,
Right.
and not because my friend did it or something, but because I was truly convinced. And so that's why he's encouraged us to deliberate it, and he gave us so much for deliberation. And he was very happy to see that devotees were stepping forward and that they actually were surrendering, and benefiting from it. I mean, they're all even those who later fell away due to weakness of heart or whatever. They still believed in the philosophy, but they had some weakness that they couldn't do it. So, but having that intelligence and mind that's convinced is a very essential aspect to continuing on the process. So he always encourages us to read, because so many devotees, you come and you get swept up in the chanting and there's so much joy, and you're feeling it, even whether you know anything or not. But unless you read and get a philosophical foundation, then when difficulties come, you can easily go away too, because the bliss isn't there, somehow or other, or whatever. So that's what Prabhupada is mentioning here. You could expand on this and say that, and he said many times, devotees have to read my books, and get a firm philosophical foundation, because that really stays with you. And you can say, okay, I understand there's a difficulty here, but I understand the truth is still there. And this is one of the definitions of faith. In the again, by Lord Chaitanya's teachings, is Shraddha. Shraddha is faith. Shabde Vishwas Kore Sudadanashtroy, is a very, very firm conviction that just by the process of devotional service, fulfilling the duties of devotional service, all my aspirations will eventually be fulfilled. And that faith can carry you over difficulties in devotional life. Say, okay, I see this is happening, but I'm still determined to stay with it. So that comes from being well-versed in the philosophy and experience and deliberating on the whole thing and seeing how it makes sense, So that Prabhupada wanted us to be, intelligent and to cultivate the internal aspect of Krishna consciousness, full understanding. That's what he's talking about here, So I think
Krishna,
that's what these classes are for. Yes, go ahead, Dhanabai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Nice class as always, Prabhu. Thank you. I have a question. When you mention, or in the book always says devotional service. So sometimes people say chanting is devotional service if you just chant and hear. But do we have to, like other services are also important too, right? Besides chanting and hearing, like any service of the Lord, temple service, or any other services, if we want to progress, right? Is that correct understanding, or only chanting, hearing?
Yeah, well, the foundation is chanting and hearing. And there are very few services where you can't chant or hear while you're doing them. In other words, if you're going out and distributing books, you're doing a lot of chanting and some hearing, right? You're also absorbed. And so the idea is that we're having a personal relationship here. And so you develop through chanting and hearing your Krishna consciousness. You're more and more attuned to Krishna's desires expressed through the spiritual master. There's all these things to do. And what do you hear? What do you soon learn? That Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, the spiritual master, Radharani, everybody wants you to become firmly fixed in devotional service and give it to others. Lord Chaitanya's movement inevitably involves spreading the name. It's nice to look at the model that Lord Chaitanya said himself. It said right at the beginning that there's the internal reason and the external reason for Lord Chaitanya coming. Right there, Narpita Charim Chadat. This is a verse that Lord Krishna came in the form of Lord Chaitanya to bestow the highest levels of bhakti in Ujjvala Ras, the conjugal Ras, and to give his own service. In other words, a model of that his service was to Krishna, to give to others, to show by example. So, but then he had also an internal reason. That's reason number one, external. The internal reason was so that he could relish the glory of Radharani's love for him from her point of view, and that his own beauty and qualities from her point of view, and the bliss that she's feeling from loving him and being loved by him. He couldn't do that in Vaikuntha. He couldn't do that in Goloka. So we also need that. We should have our own personal aspirations for advancing in devotional service. But as well, when we're strengthened by that advancement, we just say, well, how can I help others to come? And the wonderful thing is that also makes you stronger in devotional service. You can see that the greatest preachers are also very advanced in devotional service. They're feeling the bliss from preaching and from chanting. Vaisheshika is a perfect example of so many things, and this is one of them. His book distribution personified. He distributes thousands of books and inspires others to distribute thousands of books. But then a certain time of the year, this is before COVID, I don't know if he's doing it right now, but he'd go to Vrindavan and spend at least a month in Govardhan, circling around, hearing and chanting hours and hours, hearing Srila Prabhupada's book, discussing them, bathing in Radhakund. I was there for some of these. All internal stuff, strengthening, getting, firing up. And so many other devotees were following him. And then back into the, fire of book distribution, which is also nectar. And never giving up on the hearing and chanting. That's always part of it, So that's how it works. It's not that, what was it, surrender to the Supreme Lord? What was the quote you had from the purport?
I forgot.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. That the hearing and chanting is essential, And they can accompany most any other service. But there's also the desire to fulfill the mission of the previous acharyas, and of course Lord Chaitanya, to spread the mission. And then that gives so many other services. We have to maintain the temple, go out, keep the place clean, produce the books, whatever it is. It's all part of the mission. And they work together, complementary. One doesn't work without the other.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice. Thank you, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Poem. You'll have to wait till tomorrow.